All right, everyone, thank you for welcoming to your class. As mentioned, my name is John Puente. I'm the Director of the Office of Fairness and Accountability for the Utah Judiciary. So, when people think of the judiciary, they're like, what is that? So we are the third branch of government. We are the state courts. But when people think of government, they usually think of, the other two branches, whether it's the governor or the legislature. And we kind of get forgotten. But yeah, we're a co-equal and independent branch of government. By way of introduction, I'm originally from Chicago. I got my law degree at Loyola University, and I got my undergrad at BYU. So that's a little bit about me, what I do, where I'm from. What about you all? How many of you are business majors? Show of hands. Everybody? All right. How many are originally from Utah? Okay, who's not from Utah? Where are you from?
I was born in Portland, Oregon, but I was raised in the South, and then my parents moved me here when I was 15.
Oh, right on. And so what are you folks want to do with your business degree?
I'm still trying to figure it out.
Okay. Anyone else?
Accounting.
What? Accounting? I was a business management major until I took accounting. So good for you. Let's take that one. What else? Who wants to share?
We say the same, I have no idea.
No idea. Okay. All right. So now that we know who's who and we know each other, let's get going. So, Office of Fairness and Accountability. So let me give you a little background. 24 years ago, the Utah court established a commission on racial and ethnic fairness in the courts. So this commission, the commission started in 1996. Just to, I'll age myself here. In 1996, I was sophomore in high school learning how to drive. So that's when the commission got started. So for 4 years, this commission gathered data, they did outreach, they did research, and in year 2000, they submitted a report to the Judicial Council. The Judicial Council is a body of judges that governs the judicial branch. So they submitted this really big report with over 75 recommendations to the Judicial Council on how to deal with issues of racial and ethnic fairness in the courts. They found a couple of things in their research. Two really big findings that they found in their research. One was that folks of color are overrepresented in the criminal adjudication process. And not just this, but so the criminal adjudication process, if you look at it linearly, everyone starts out the same when the officer writes the statement of facts. But what they found is that as the deeper you went into the process, the overrepresentation of folks of color grew. So what does that tell us? Because no one can come in halfway through the process, that tells us that folks, the majority, falls off the criminal adjudication process and folks of color don't. So they get different adjudication. Okay. The second thing they found was that folks from historically marginalized communities have this presumption that they're not going to get treated fairly or with respect in the courts. Now, the commission didn't find any actual findings or data behind that, but it's this feeling, right? So if you feel that way, that means that trust and confidence probably isn't there. Okay. So the commission put this in the report, they handed it to the Judicial Council, and guess what the Judicial Council did? Anyone? Yes? No? There's no right or wrong answer, it's a guess. Guess what the council did with all this findings and research and report?
Did they just decline?
Yes, they said thank you, and they shelved it, they didn't do anything with it. Even though there was like a ton of like, recommendations on what to do and how they can help the courts, how they can help certain communities, they said, oh, thank you, and they shelved it. Anyway, that was in the year 2000. Okay, fast forward, 2020. We're all in our homes because we're quarantined, and we watch all of us watch the cops kill this guy on TV, George Floyd. When we were all at one. So, look, as I mentioned, I am from Chicago. I grew up there in the 90s. Any of you know what was happening in Chicago in the 90s? Michael Jordan and the Bulls went on a 6 championship run in that whole decade. Every year after they won a championship, the city threw a very proper riot. Because the Bulls won, so we would riot.
A parade?
We would riot, like they'd go over, they would flip cars over, and yeah, we won the championship. So we knew how to throw a proper riot. Why do I tell you this? So in Salt Lake, after George Floyd was murdered, it was the first time I had ever seen a riot happen in Salt Lake City. To me, I was like, what? Because being in Chicago, we're used to it, right? Like the Cubs lose, let's go riot. Like, I had never seen that happen here, and neither had the courts. There were folks literally storming the courthouse. Like throwing bricks and throwing, So the judicial council's like, what are we gonna do? What are we going to do? So one of the older judges said, hey, didn't we have that report 20-some years ago about racial and ethnic fairness in the courts? So they're like, oh yeah, so they unshelved the report. And one of the recommendations was to, oh, it's not moving. So, there we go. One of the recommendations was to open an office of fairness and accountability to address these issues. So that's the rule. The Utah Code of Judicial Adjudication that established the Office of Fairness and Accountability. So the OFA is established within the Administrative Office of the Courts, to organize and lead the judicial branch in examining and addressing processes, outcomes within the branch that contribute to or cause the unequal treatment of individuals based on factors such as, and people usually just focus on race, but it's so much broader than that. Race, gender, ethnicity, age, disability, socioeconomic status, religion, sexual orientation, marital status, veteran status, or any other status protected under the law. So my office is set up to make sure that folks are treated with fairness and respect when they go to the courts. All right, so right now, a couple things we're working on. My department, the OFA, we manage the language access program. So, if you have a court case, it's part of your constitutional right to understand what's happening in your case. So interpreters are provided to you if you don't speak English. Think about it. If you're, I don't know, what's the country that doesn't speak English? If you're in Kazakhstan and all of a sudden you find yourself in court and you don't know what's going on, you're gonna be like, hey, I need an interpreter. So that's what the language access program does. They supervise, they work with all of the court interpreters, both language and sign language. We remember the second thing that the original task force reported on was that folks felt that we're not gonna get treated fairly in the courts. So we also do public outreach. Look, right now, it's no secret that a lot of folks don't trust institutions, especially government. So that's why we do a lot of public outreach to try to build public trust and confidence in the courts. Okay. We work with ERGs, which are employee resource groups, and we're also working on several projects to address any desperate outcomes that the courts may have. So, just some numbers. The district courts had this many cases that require an interpreter. The justice courts had a lot more. Anyone know the difference between district courts and justice courts? I'll just tell you, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, is the church more like centered around like parks and events and like different things like that, and maybe that's just more kind of
The other way around. So justice courts are like your municipal court, like your city court, your county court. You got a speeding ticket, you go, or it's a low level offense. District courts are your courts of original jurisdiction, so it's not just criminal, but it's also like divorces. Any other family type cases, evictions, landlord tenant issues, any civil lawsuit, that's where it's the original jurisdiction of the district courts. So, there's 8 districts in Utah. Here's the breakdown. If you're in Salt Lake County, all of you are in the 3rd district, okay? And then you have juvenile cases, and those are for juveniles, anyone under 18, and there's 2 types of cases in juvenile courts. There are welfare cases and disciplinary or criminal cases, okay? And here's the total breakdown with juvenile. So, by the way, if anyone speaks another language and you want to become an interpreter, email me afterwards. It's like $57 an hour. Once you get certified, okay? And you see the breakdown of the languages, you can clearly see Spanish, just like words, all the other languages. Yeah, Arabic's number 2. Okay, so Samoan, you see the breakdown, okay? Here's some of the outreach that we're doing. And again, because folks have very little trust and confidence in the courts, we just can't show up to these community events or community parties and be like, hey, pay attention to this. So what we do is we just show up, say, hey, we're here as a resource. Anything we can do to serve the community, let us know, okay? So we work with, when we talk about community partners, those are other government agencies, nonprofits, local governments that we work with and engage with to help, because this is the thing, that's who the community trusts, that's where they go to. They don't go to the government, like, I need help, and go look at me, they're like, hey, I need help, I'm gonna go to, I don't know, what's the community or like Comunidades Unidas, they're right around the corner from him. That's where they go, and then we partner with them and work with them. Okay. So we go to community events. These are some of the ones we've attended. We just go and we table and again, try to we take all our flyers and hand them out so folks know what resources are available to them from the courts. Okay. We used to run community court. We just sunset that a month ago. What that was, and here's the thing, a lot of folks have this apprehension about going to court. So what we were doing is we were taking court services and putting them at Kern's library. Think about it. And here's what, if you really think about it, unless you're going to court because you're adopting someone or getting adopted or having a name change or getting married, some folks still do that, get married at the courthouse. Unless it's for those 3 things, you're going to court because your life hit a snag somewhere. It's probably not the best day of your life. You're getting sued, you're getting divorced, you had something happen in your life. Probably not very pleasant, and you find yourself in court. So, you have that, so we're already starting in the red when it comes to trauma, you know? And then if you don't know the system, which most people don't know the system, you kind of put that layer on top of that trauma, you know, and then if you don't trust institutions, you're like, what, because you don't know the system, and you put that layer on top of that. And then if you don't know the language, you put a really big layer on top of that. So this is some of the things that we're doing, you know, to kind of address that. So having court services out of that building in a community space, we felt that really would alleviate that, okay? Matt, the reason, here's the thing, actually, we were expecting 10 folks a month to show up to community court. We were getting up to 50, 60. So it was incredibly popular. The only reason why we sunset it is that we were getting folks that didn't have court cases. They would just walk in and say, I want to get divorced, and we're like, typically you're supposed to already have a case, and we can help the case move on, you know? So what we did is we partnered with the pro bono initiative from the law school. They brought in law students and lawyer volunteers that can give legal advice and focus on how to do that, because we can't. We can help the case move along, but we can't, you know, if there was no case, we're like, we can't, you know? So, but that's a lot of the folks that were showing up were, you know, like, hey, I want to change custody of my kid. Like, you have a case? No, well, yeah, we can't, without a case, we can't help you along. So we handed community court off to the pro bono initiative at the U because they can help with that, okay? The other thing that we run is the Judicial Inclusion Mentorship Program, and that's where we pair law students with judges as mentor-mentee relationships. So they were thinking about becoming a judge, they can, you know, get a judge as a mentor for them. And also what we do is we send judges to high schools and middle schools to address and talk about a couple of things. One, how to become a judge, and the second is civics education. Because one of the things that we're seeing is that a lot of folks don't know civics education. Like you saw in the presidential election, folks that raised, they would say things and like, that's not how it works. You know, like, and a lot of folks just didn't know how the process. So part of the judiciary is leading out in civics education and working on helping folks know, like, hey, this is how the government works. And truthfully, before law school, I just remember from civics in junior high, like something about 2/3 and another one about 4/5, and that was about it. But other than that, a lot of folks don't know, like, hey, here's how government works. Here is a couple of projects that we're working on. One, because we are the third branch of government, we're governed by committees. However, one of the things we noticed, let me give you, before I tell you this, in Utah, the district courts handle the bulk of the cases, right? Because justice courts are mostly fines and tickets, but the district courts handle the bulk of the cases. And it's a split of 80-20. So 80% of the cases are civil cases, and 20% of the cases are criminal cases. So now that you're, you know, follow the math here with me. So 80% are civil cases. Yeah.
You said district courts handle cases. What's the other court that handles tickets?
Oh, justice courts. So follow this with me. So 80% of the cases are civil cases. In Utah, 90% of the civil cases, one or two of the parties is self-represented. Does anyone know what that means? Tell us what that means.
They don't have like an attorney or lawyer.
Yes, they don't have an attorney. So they just like Google stuff and show up to court. Now, here's the thing, if the other party is lawyered up, guess what's gonna happen to the party that's a self-rep? Just guess. What? Yeah. So, but in Utah, keep in mind, 90% of civil cases, one or two party or both parties don't have an attorney. And a lot is economies of scale, right? Like the three major cases we have in Utah that are self-reps are these: evictions, debt collection, and family law. So think about it. If you can't afford rent, can you afford an attorney? Probably not. If you are in a debt collection case, someone's trying to collect from you, can you afford an attorney? No, I might need to pay your debt. So. The system is set up for parties that are lawyered up. However, that's not who's using the system. Keep in mind, 90% of the cases are folks that don't know the code, right? So one of the things that we're working on, as I mentioned, the judiciary is government, so we have all these committees and boards. One of the things that, and most of the folks that sit on those boards and those committees, if you were to take a guess who they were, who would you say sits on those boards and committees? I'll tell you, judges and lawyers.
Oh,
Yeah, that's who sits on committees. However, so they make the rules for cases and they make all these policy decisions. However, what we know is that most of the folks that go to court are not lawyers. So one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to add community voices to all of these committees. So have folks that actually use court to be represented on all of these committees, right? Because they're like, so I'll give you an example. If you read a old legal book, most folks are like, what does this say? Like, if any of you use Apple, you know, and you get every once in a while their terms and agreement, and you're like, what is this saying? And people just scroll down and click OK and move on. We call that legalese. Most folks are like, what? One of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to have our forms at a 5th grade, 6th grade reading level. Because that's something that most folks can understand. That's the level that most newspapers are written at. So folks can actually go, oh, this is what they're asking. Like, for example, if I were to say, yeah, so many cases were adjudicated, people would be like, okay, I'm like, do you understand what adjudicated means? And people are like, yes, but deep down, I would say most people are like, I don't know what that word means. You know, that's a legalese term. And that just means that a judge decided. And people are like, why didn't you just say that instead of saying that, you know? So that's one of the things that we're doing by having community members in those committees. They can bring that lens, that perspective, okay? The other thing that we're doing is outside of Salt Lake. It's really difficult to do outreach. So we're having this program called Core Connect, where we do outreach and engage community-based our community partners. In counties out that are not Salt Lake County. So like Iron County, Washington County, I don't know what Price is, Logan. Because obviously there's population there that uses courts. And we want to engage with them and be a resource to them also. So Core Connect is this process where we introduce those community partners to court staff. Okay. DRGs, one of the things, there's actually research, remember, in building trust and confidence, there's research behind this. What the research shows is that if you have a bench, and in the judiciary, when we say bench, we're meaning the group of judges. What the research shows is that if you have a bench and staff that reflects the community, trust and confidence grows. Because when folks walk into court and they see themselves reflected, they're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna get treated fairly, you know? So, we have employee resource groups to help, in retention with our staff. So we have an LGBTQ resource group, we have a court and a research group for, folks of color, and a resource group for women. We're trying to launch one for veterans. We're hoping that it gets off the ground, but right now we have 3 active ones. Okay, what's funny, we tried launching one for working parents, and a ton of people showed up for that one. And then when we asked who wants to lead out, it was crickets. And I get it, right? Like they're already balancing work and being a parent. So, yeah. So we work with staff in that regard. Okay, these are 3 projects that we are currently working on. So remember, we have 3 benches: the district bench, justice court bench, and the juvenile bench. And we are looking at data. Remember we talked about that 20 years ago or whatever. The commission said that they found that folks of color were overrepresented in the criminal adjudication process. And that overrepresentation grew the deeper you went into the process. So one of the reasons the courts can never really address this is because we did not collect racial and ethnic demographic data. So we didn't know who's who. So we couldn't address this issue until folks got to jail. And in jail, everyone self ID, you know, they put in their information and so they self ID. So I'll tell you this demographic point. In Utah, folks that identify as Black or African American make up like 1.8% of the population. It's pretty small. However, in jails and prisons, folks that identify in this demographic group make up 7% of the population. So it's a really significant jump. It's a really significant jump. Same, you see this in other groups, not as prevalent, but you see this, and the judiciary is like, why is this such a big jump? And we would see anecdotally, like probation officers would tell us anecdotally, like 2 kids were doing the exact same thing when they both came to court, even though they were in the same act. Kid A, who identifies in this demographic group, got sentenced to this, and kid B, who identifies in this other demographic group, got sentenced to this. So we were like, however, it was all anecdotal, right? Because we don't keep, at the time we didn't keep demographic information. So we're like, if they're being, is it, and sometimes they look at background, sometimes they look, but so we had to take all these things into consideration and say, if they're involved in the same act, why the disparity? So we have these projects. So. Because we just started collecting this information now, we didn't collect it before. So what we did to get around this information is we partnered up with, Georgetown. And they have Georgetown University has a massive data institute. And we're gonna send them all of our data. And, they're gonna take that data to the census. And in the census, everyone self-ID, like everyone, every 10 years old, check the boxes and and they're gonna do a one-to-one match. And they're gonna send that back to us and they're gonna say, here's what it is. Looking apples to apples. Folks in this demographic group got sentenced to this, folks in this other demographic group got sentenced to this. So now that we know where the disparities are, then we can develop policy recommendations to address those issues. So we're actually, this is the dragon, the regiment, the folks that have been talking about this for like since 2000. So we're working on these projects to address those racial disparities. The other one we're looking at is doing this with juries. Has anyone ever sat on a jury? Okay, so here's the thing. But it's your constitutional right to be judged by a jury of your peers. It's in the Constitution. Utah right now is about 20% folks that identify as folks of color. So, however, if you look at our juries do not reflect that. So one of the things that we're looking at is where we pull from for jury pools. Like, are we pulling from pools that are already not reflected? Do we need to change where we're pulling people from? We're looking for here is jury selection. This is where judges and the lawyers get together and say, we need to strike potential juror 12 because of this, and we're going to strike. And so we're looking at we're here to see, like, is this being used to get folks out of jury pools? We're looking at compensation. So you get paid $18 a day to sit on a jury. So if you work an hourly job, $18 a day is a huge ask. So we're like, should we address that? Because what we want is we want folks to be judged by a jury, by their community. So if you sit in a jury and like, hey, my community does not look like this, then you're like, where are the links in the pipeline? So we're looking at examining this to see where they're at. And this is more of a long-term project. All Rise is a pipeline program that we are developing to have a bench that reflects the community. And keep in mind, one, we talk about trust and confidence, right? But when you have that, you have more trust and confidence. But also, one of the tenets of our government is that government is of the people, for the people, by the people. So because of that, government should reflect the people. So right now, our bench. What?
The government works for the people.
Yeah, it works. Yeah, it's for the people. So right now, so the third branch of government doesn't really reflect the state. Both racially, ethnically, and gender-wise. The Supreme Court is majority women, and folks think the rest of the bench is the same way. But once you drop to the district level, the gender equality goes away quick. So here we're working to have a more reflective bench. And what we mean by that, it's not just, again, let me emphasize, it's not just race and ethnicity, but it's gender, it's LGBTQ, it's socioeconomic. So what that means is Cause a lot of lawyers, come from families of lawyers. So what we want is you can be, a white male. We still want you, if your parents were, I don't know, construction workers, if they were teachers, we want a bench that reflects the community. Because a lot of folks, when they think this, they're like, oh, it's just race and ethnicity. It's not. We want a really reflective bench. Because if you come from a family of judges and lawyers, your lens is already skewed to think like a judge and a lawyer, and this is what you think what normal is, and it's not. We want like folks that are in the community to be part of the bench, okay? So here we work with the law schools and the bar to get a pipeline going to have folks apply for judicial positions. Okay, right now we're working on a strategic plan with these are 3 areas of focus: access to justice, ensuring constitutional openness, and building public trust and confidence in the courts. Okay. All right. Having said that, questions? Yeah.
You guys work with like trying to find public defenders for like the underrepresented communities, because like I know a lot of people self-represent. Do you guys try to help match them with people?
So this is one of the most interesting questions we get, because here's the thing, remember the 80-20 split? So 80% of the cases are civil and 20 are criminal. So here's the thing, by law, on a criminal case, you have to have a public defender. You cannot be a self-rep. You can, but you have to waive having that representation. So people assume that you also get an attorney on the civil case. But you only get an attorney awarded to you on criminal cases. So for those, yeah, like there's the LDA, the Legal Defenders Association, Public Defenders Association, where they work with folks that can't afford an attorney to get an attorney, but only on criminal cases. Not on civil cases. On a civil case, if you can't afford an attorney, like you can do legal aid, but they're incredibly backed up. And they only help out in like family law cases. So like if your neighbor's suing you over your fence, like if you can't afford an attorney, like you show up and ask Google to be your the best for you. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, because I mean, like, I hear about that, and I'm like, since there's like such a large amount of people self-representing, I wonder if there's any legal help that's like obligated towards that. But I guess by that time, there's no policy or anything saying you guys need something.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what other states are doing, because this is not a Utah problem. This is like a national problem. So what the states on the coast, West Coast are doing is they're letting paralegals give legal advice. So you know how in medicine did this a long time ago, where they're letting physician assistants give medical advice and nurse practitioners give medical advice. So they're trying this out with on the legal profession and with letting paralegals give legal advice. So Oregon, Washington, California have that. Utah just started doing that, I think 4 or 5 years ago. It's called the LPP program. I don't know if Lake has that. I know UVE does, where they have an LPP and they can certify you as a paralegal and you can apply to the program and give legal advice. But so they're looking for, folks are looking for ways to address that, and that's one of the ideas that has come up. Any other questions? Yeah.
Which one of these like projects are you like most proud of?
Oh, man. So I'm kind of digging all of them. Look, this is not to get political right now, but anything dealing with race and ethnicity right now is kind of, everyone's kind of like, you know, so this is where I kind of have to push and, okay, any of you ever work with ropes? You know, and a rope, if it's too windly, if you wind it up too tight, it snaps. like it breaks and, you know. So this is where you have to feel the tension in the rope where like it's tight. But you can't like overwind it because it'll snap. So that's how I'm kind of feeling with all of them, where I'm like, if we figure out why folks of color are overrepresented and we address that and we eliminate that, I will die a happy, happy man. If we figure out why juries are not overrepresented, I will die a happy, happy man. If we figure out why in Utah, women don't apply to become judges in high number, I will die a happy, happy, happy man. So I'm kind of proud in all of these, like pushing in all of these, because it's your government. Like, your government should serve you. Yeah,
What are you guys doing about the unsheltered community? Like, how are you figuring out ways to support them? 'Cause I know earlier this year, like Grants Pass versus Johnson was really, like, states kind of have the opportunity to crack down on the unsheltered community when they see fit. So throughout the past like couple of years, I've seen a lot of like, encampments being abated and like the shelters are always full. And I just think a really good way to get the community to trust the government is by supporting the most underrepresented like population within the community, which I personally think is the unsheltered community, and I just don't really see much happening.
great question. So a couple of things that we're doing. One, remember, we're taking court services to the community. So one of the things that we've done is, remember, one is community court. So we took court, we put it at the current library. And that was for the district court. The justice courts are the same thing. But they call it kayak court. And they actually judges when, because a lot of folks encamp by the Jordan River. So they actually took kayaks and had courts on kayaks on the Jordan River for the in-house population. Like right now, if you do a quick Google search and just Google kayak court, it'll come up how they actually held court on the Jordan River Trail for the in-house population. And then we do, and this is not the best practice name, but it's still called this. We still have homeless court once a month in the shelters, by, what's that mall called? Gateway. And then the governor passed, funded, another court for on the in-house community. However, this incoming administration, presidential administration, is already saying that they're gonna pass legislation that's probably not conducive to what you're talking about, so we're waiting to see. And they trump, because they're the feds, so we're waiting to see whatever they pass, because it's gonna impact us. But on our end, that's what we've done to really help out these folks. Like, judges go to, fairs for on the house population and do expungements, they do, there is all they do case resolutions. So we go like in boots on the ground, but like, as I mentioned, we don't know what this new administration is gonna, what policies are gonna implement, but they're probably gonna impact what the services that we do. Yeah,
And with the new Trump administration, you mentioned that you were partnering with Georgetown for data. Is there a way where the administration can kind of just dismiss all that?
well, let's talk about different sovereigns. So here, it's the state courts. So the policies that we develop from the data that comes from Georgetown are gonna be for the state level. Now, there's the federal courts, which the new administration oversees, because, well, not oversees, but works with, because they're the feds. So it's two different levels of government, so they won't impact what we do in the state courts, because it's the state courts and there's federal courts, and that's who works with the feds. Okay. But I hope that they will also address these issues, because I'm sure their data also has these issues of disparity. Other question, yeah,
Is there a way that us as citizens can do anything to help out, like how you mentioned, represent the community more, or like, you know, just being more attuned to, helping those out that can't get to help the community?
repeat the first part, who can help out?
Is there a way like us, like, just as a.
Yeah, one is accountability. So when we have community members and committees. If you have time, volunteer to sit on your, you know, on those committees, like. Look. People. Right now, again, I mentioned they don't trust government. And one of the things I'll tell you is if you don't trust them. Join them, like, get involved. Go to your school board meetings, go to sit on these committees. Like, it's your government, you can impact government. If you are seeing things like seeing your tax money and you're like, why are we paying for that? You can do two things, and you can vote out the folks that are spending the money that way, or you can get involved and run and actually, you know. But those are things that you can really do. If this is one of the things that you can do, go to law school and say, hey, I want to be a public servant and I want to, you know, work with government and like get involved and develop policy that can help my community. Those, I mean, that's one of the things that's incredible about our government, that it is for the people, by the people and of the people, so you can, that is not applied to, that's like a real thing, you know, especially at the local level.